Well, good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, wherever you are in your part of the country or your part of the US and Canada or the world. We had some people from South Africa on our Facebook Live last night. So we know that we are reaching many, many, many women who want to learn how to get healthy, how to learn how to get strong, how to learn how to have good relationships with themselves, with others, and with God. So just give me a shout out that you're here. I always like to start knowing that I'm talking to somebody. Coach Leanne is here with me, and we're going to be talking about the 4-letter word that can ruin your life. So just give us a shout out that you are here. Saying hello helps us. And I'm just going to wait a second. Leanne, how are you this morning?
I am doing well. I got up this morning and I played pickleball. So my day started very well at 6 a.m. today.
Isn't it too cold to play pickleball at 6 a.m.? I just think, oh my gosh, I'd be freezing.
It was gorgeous. Well, once you get moving, and then, you get with the girls and you just start laughing and playing and running around. So you'll have to join us sometime.
Yeah, I will. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Deborah, Sylvia, Grace, Sherry. Elle, thank you so much, Renata. I'm so glad that you're here. And Tasha, thank you for letting us know. We appreciate it. So let's start by just playing a guessing game. What do you think the 4-letter word is that can ruin your life? What's the 4-letter word that can ruin your life? Put it in the chat. South Africa. Lorraine, you're from South Africa. Amazing. I'd like to go to South Africa sometime. How about you, Leanne? Would you like to go to South Africa sometime?
I would love to go to South Africa.
Wouldn't it be nice to have a little speaking engagement out there, a little Conquer conference or something? Anyway, so who wants to guess? What's the 4-letter word? Food. All right. 2 people are saying can't. The 3rd word is fear. Hate. Wow, you guys are rocking this morning, huh? All right. Fear, hate, food, can't. Those are all pretty good 4-letter words. Food, I'm not sure. Bad food could, but all food, not. Can't. Okay, can't. Hi, Debbie. Good to see you. So the word that we're going to camp on today, fear would be a good one, but fear sometimes is appropriate. But can't usually is a lie. When you say can't, someone said don't. Nice. Hell. You guys are rocking this morning. Those are all good 4-letter words. Isn't it amazing how many kind of dicey 4-letter words there are, or how many neutral 4-letter words are? But can't is stay. Stay can, won't. Okay. I'm not sure won't, because we're going to talk about the difference between won't and can't. What's the difference between won't and can't? Can you think of one word that would really capture the difference between I can't and I won't? What's the word? I can't or I won't. Anything, any ideas of what word might capture the difference between those 2 words? Because sometimes it means the same thing. You won't do something, but you're saying, oh, I can't. But really, you won't. You don't want to. All right, well, ownership. Okay, ownership. Shannon's got it. Ownership. So quit is another bad 4-letter word. You guys are, I'm going to make a couple of Facebooks about all these 4-letter words. But yeah, these are all bad 4-letter words. But the can't word is the victim mindset word. All right. I won't is an owner mindset, because there's times that you don't want to do something and it's fine to say, I won't do that. I don't want to do that. No, that's not good for me. There's lots of ways of saying won't. But can't is more of a passive, helpless. I can't do it. I can't change my life. I can't change my life story. I can't change my eating habits. I can't change my thought patterns. I can't leave a destructive marriage. Why not? Why can't you? So what if you changed I won't? I won't change my eating habits. I won't change my living situation. I won't get help for myself, for my codependency, or for my victim mindset. I won't do anything to help myself. Well, now it's much clearer that you have a lot of power that you didn't feel when you said can't. Right? When you say can't, I can't do this right. How many of us have tried something? Like some of you I've shared, I'm painting now. I've been painting. I've been trying to paint my whole life. But I just got back into painting in probably the last 8 years. And there's many times I'm like, I just can't do this. I can't get it. And that's not really true. But what happens when we tell ourselves that? Shannon says, my therapist corrects me every time I use the word can't. It is now ingrained in me. I won't, or he won't. We could if we wanted. Then how has can't limited you in your life?
Can't has limited me a lot. So it began in elementary school or high school for me. I really stunk at algebra. And so I would say all the time, I can't do algebra. Give me geometry, I can do that. And so it was interesting because I had a desire to go to nursing school right out of high school. And because I kept saying, I can't do math, I can't do algebra, I got told by my counselor, right, the school counselor, that I had to be able to do algebra in order to go to nursing school. So it actually kept me from pursuing a dream that I had. I can't do math. So that's where it began. And then there's been many can'ts in my world since then. But that was the genesis. What about you, Leslie?
I had a lot of can'ts. But the biggest one I remember is in graduate school. And I've shared this story before. So I told myself, I can't write. Now, that's not true. You have to write something to get through graduate school. But in my mind, I can't write well enough to do a PhD program. And so I think it was a cover up for my fear of failure. I don't want to embarrass myself or have corrections and all those kinds of things. But I told myself I can't do that. And this was a goal, a dream that, I thought I had, that maybe I'd want to do that. But then I talked myself right out of it because I can't. Just like with you in algebra, I'm not smart enough. I'm not enough. We've had those I'm not enough videos. I'm not enough. I don't have enough. I don't have what it takes. I can't do it. And that limited my story. So I didn't do it. Now, 20 years later, God calls me to write a book. And I still said, who, me? God, you know me. You remember 20 years ago, I can't do that. But this time I had matured enough to say, maybe that's not true. Maybe if you're calling me to do it, you will equip me to do it. And even if I fail at writing a publishing book, like a book that someone actually wants to publish to make public, maybe you're still calling me to the discipline of learning to write. And that I can do. Right? So sometimes we tie I can't to the outcome. Like I can't have a good conversation with my husband because he won't listen. And maybe that's true that he won't listen, but that doesn't mean you can't have your side of the street in a good conversation, right? There's things that you can do that you can't control other people or the outcome of how they handle things. But there's things that you can do that God might be calling you to do that feel real scary. And we tell ourselves we can't because we don't want to enter into that circle of fear, terror sometimes.
Well, and it's almost terror. Another one of my can'ts that I had when I was homeschooling my kiddos way back when is that I can't drive in Denver traffic. We were living in Colorado at the time. And I said, I can't drive near the Capitol. I can't go downtown Denver because I'm going to get lost. So it limited me on the travel that I would do because I didn't think I was capable. It was a scary thing. And it kind of bummed me out a lot because I wanted to go do those things, but I felt like I couldn't.
Yeah. Self-sabotaging, Lisa's saying we get in our own way. Donna says, I struggle with that too. I can't write. Thanks for sharing that for me. Yeah. And there's lots of things that we limit ourselves that, if we're not good at something right away, or we don't feel competent, then we tell ourselves that we can't, which more truthfully would be either I don't want to learn to be competent because there is a learning curve. Last year we did an exercise challenge in one of our membership groups, Conquer. And so my limiting belief has always been, and I'm well over 60, and my limiting belief has always been, even when I was in my 30s, I can't do a man's push-up. Like from arms to feet, I always did them on my knees. I can't do that. I can't do a whole man's push-up. I don't have the strength in my upper body to do that. Even when I was working out pretty regularly at the gym, I still would tell myself, I can't do that. So I never did. So on this challenge last January, I decided that I would do a man's push-up. And I would do one a day and add the next one. By the end of the month, I would be able to do 30 men's push-ups. Now, I've never done a man's push-up before. This was last year, well into my 60s. The first man's push-up, of course, I didn't go all the way down, but I went like halfway down and then up. And that was my one man's push-up. I can do it. The next day, I went a little further down, up, and then I went halfway down again and up. I did 2. Well, by the end of the 30 days, guess what I was doing? I was doing men's push-ups. I couldn't do all 30 in a row yet, but I could do 10 in a row and 10 good ones that went all the way down. And then another 10 that went all the way down. And then kind of towards the last ones, they kind of went halfway down, but I still did 30 because I worked at it. I worked at it. You see, sometimes we can't do the big picture today, but we can take small steps to get there.
And those small steps, one at a time, they don't have to be big steps, right? They can be baby steps. I often say we can creep, we can leap, right? Or we can go to sleep and we can forget our goals or our desires. And you set that desire for yourself in that challenge. And you know what I love, Leslie, when you were sharing that was that you made that conscious decision to do it. And you had some accountability in order to make it happen for you.
Yeah, I had to show up and actually do the 30 push-ups on a Facebook Live in our support group. And we had the camera on the floor. And I'm like, I'm saying, okay, if this old lady can do this, you can do some of the things that you think you can't do either. And it's a limiting belief that we have that limits our story. And so one of the things that we're opening up now is our 6-month group coaching program called Empower to Change. And that gives you that hand-holding, step-by-step, week by week, month by month process to start identifying some of those limiting beliefs and starting to clear them out of your vocabulary so that you are now freed up to be more courageous, freed up to try new juicy things, freed up to explore how you do want to change and actually put those things into practice. And Leanne is one of our coaches on our coaching team that is going to take a couple of groups, and there's other coaches that are going to take a couple groups. There's only a limited amount of groups and only 15 women can be in each group. So if you are interested, a lot of the groups have filled up already, but if you are interested, go to the website of leslievernick.com/change and read about the Empower to Change 6-month coaching group, which will start in January, but we're having our first kind of party next Friday. We're going to get together and just meet each other and talk a little bit about what Empower to Change looks like and all the different things, all the mechanics to it on Zoom and how to get into the membership site and all those kind of things. So if you're a little tech challenged, don't wait to sign up after December 18th, because you want to be a part of that party. I think it's December 17th or 18th, next Friday. Mm-hmm. We're going to have a Zoom call for about an hour and a half, just with women who have signed up for Empower to Change. Edie says, I'm signed up. Good for you.
I just saw that too. That's so fun.
Yeah. I'm so glad you're signed up. So how has can't limited you? We've shared 2 ways that can't has limited us in the past. And, I think that there are certain things that we physically can't do. Like, we have to understand we do have limitations. Like I can't hold my breath for 5 minutes. But the things that God is asking me to do, or the things that I feel called to do, I often feel like I can't do it. But, I've been reading a couple books by Navy SEALs. I'm just interested in how they train themselves to do things that most, like hold their breath for 3 minutes. How do you do that? Like I can't right now. But I could train myself to hold my breath a whole lot longer than I can do right now, right? And so there's certain limitations, but what the Navy SEALs say is that basically human beings are only living 60% of their potential, both mentally, physically, and relationally, that there's so much more that God has wired us to do that we just don't do because we tell ourselves we can't. We can't make decisions. We can't make good decisions. We can't take care of ourselves. Therefore, we have to stay in a destructive marriage. We can't find a job. We don't know what to do because we can't think of anything, that we're supposed to do. And so we get into this helpless, childlike stance in our life, in our adult life. And that is not at all the person that God's called you to be. He's called you to be a warrior for Christ, a warrior for life. He's called you to live your life abundantly. I have come that you might have life and life to its fullness. It doesn't mean all roses, but it means that he's equipped you to be capable. It says in the Psalms, it pleases him to make you strong. But sometimes we get a little fearful and we live in small land instead of God's land, instead of abundance. And I'm not talking about financial abundance. I'm talking about life abundance and a meaningful life, a purposeful life, not just a cushy life. And that takes some courage and some walking in faith and facing your fears and taking that word can't and either turning it into won't or turning it into, okay, I will. I'm going to do this. And however long it takes me, I'm going to do this.
You know, I just want to tag off of what you just shared and encourage those who are here. I love the feed. They're populating the feed with the limitations. Did you know, ladies, that your body will take you further than your brain ever will tell it that it can? Because there's this little spot in our brain called the amygdala. It's like the size of an almond, and that can wreak havoc with your potential, with your dreams, with your desires. And whatever you think about and focus in on will expand oftentimes. And so, one way that we can kind of bust through the can't is to know the reason why you don't want to, or to know the reason why you want to, just like Leslie did with push ups, and then where we can't, God always can. Where we can't, God always can. And He'll show up in very big ways. And I had that happen all this week. And maybe sometime we'll talk about that. But I saw God show up when I couldn't. I kept saying, well, I can't make people call back. I can't do certain things. But God, in His abundance, in His love toward us, showed up for me.
And sometimes it doesn't work out the way we want to. So that's why it's important to let go of the outcome, because sometimes we think, I can't make people call me back, or I can't make my husband love me. And you're right, you can't. But what can you do? So if your husband doesn't love you and he treats you poorly, then what can you do? Do you have to just be a victim of that situation? Or is there some agency? Is there a different ending to that story? Like, okay, I accept he doesn't love me because I can't control other people. The only person I can control is me, right? And when I ruin my life by saying, since he doesn't love me, either I can't accept that and I can't move on. I can't move on. Like, he doesn't love me. He doesn't want me. He doesn't value me. He treats me like dirt. Some of the ladies in my group have not asked me, but have recommended to one another the TV show on Netflix, Maids. I don't know how many of you have been watching it. Have you watched it, Leanne?
I got rid of my Netflix. I've been told by so many of my friends that I have to watch it just because of the work that we do.
Yeah, it's a whole series. It's a story about a lady who's fleeing a domestic violence situation, and and I'm thinking, boy, the trials that she's going through, and she's not telling herself, I can't do this. She's saying it's hard. I'm going to figure it out, and she's got a real owner mindset. But so many of us stay stuck in a very destructive. And he didn't hit her, so she never thought it was really abuse. He just scared the bejeebies out of her all the time, and she's just having to rebuild her life. She's having to write a new chapter to her life story that she never thought she would have to write. She thought she was going to live happily ever after. Who doesn't when they have a child with someone and they're not married, but they're living together? But when you get married to someone and you have a child, or 2 or 3 or 9, however, you don't expect your story to turn out like it's turning out. And yet you don't have to just be the victim of the storyline. The characters in the story have choices to make as well. And this is where your agency comes in. I have no choices. I can't do anything about it. The boat's going downstream and I guess I'm just going to die. That's not true. There's things that you can do and things that you can learn and ways that you can grow. And part of this coaching group is created to help women break through that logjam, break through that lie. And we start our very first session in Power to Change with these limiting beliefs. We don't even know they're lies yet. We just believe them. I can't do that. I could never get a job. I could never leave my kids in daycare. I could never leave my husband. That would be sin. We have these beliefs that are so hardwired in us, and we never check them out to see, is that really true? Is that really true?
Well, and I think when we have that belief that we can't, we won't even try. We don't put forth the effort because we already have that victim mindset. We're defeated before we even start because of some of those limiting beliefs. And where did these limiting beliefs come from? They can come from our family of origin. They can come from our churches, our culture, books that we read, ideas, floating around in our own heads. We can make up some beautiful stories in our own minds. And that's why we just encourage you. You know, God's word says in Philippians, I have it here. It's one of my favorite verses. It's finally, and I'll add sisters, since most of us here are gals, finally, sisters, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if there is any moral excellence, and if there is any praise, dwell on those things, not on the things that we can't do.
Yeah. So let's practice this real quickly, and then we're going to go to good questions. So let's imagine. So let's finish the story. We did this if you watched the webinar. Let's imagine that you are heading to an important appointment today in downtown, wherever you are. I want to say downtown Phoenix because that's where I'm going. But if you're wherever you are, you're heading to an appointment. And so you get in your car and you say, okay, I'm going to go here and I'm going to go here and I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And then you're in this gigantic traffic jam. And the reality is probably you're not going to get to your appointment. You can't control the traffic, right? You can't control the external storyline sometimes. So the storyline was, I'm going to the store, I'm going to go Christmas shopping, I'm going to the mall, I'm going to the doctor, wherever you're going. And there's this accident or construction or whatever. And you're like in middle of a parking lot of stopped cars. All right. So that's the story. What you do next affects the story, right? So if you say to yourself, oh my gosh, this is awful, and what a waste of time, and I can't believe I'm here, and oh my gosh, my whole day is ruined, and I can't stand this, and God, why are you making me do this? You know, I had so many things to do today, and now I have to sit in this traffic jam, and I gotta go potty, and I'm gonna pee my pants in the car, and this is just ridiculous, and I can't take it. Do you ever have any of those meltdown moments?
Yes.
I'm just being real here. I've had a couple of those myself, okay? So I can say it so well. So how does the story play out that day if that's your frame of mind in this situation? Or what if you said, God, this isn't how I planned my day. So how can I use this time in a good way? You know what? I have a really good novel on audio. I think I'll plug it into my phone and start listening to this. Or I have, some memory verses that I could review that I learned as a child. I wonder how many of them I could remember. Or how can I pray for people right now? There might be an accident out here, and maybe someone is, facing a far more serious consequence than I am. And so, Lord, whoever's causing this traffic jam, Lord, I pray for their safety. I pray for the people helpers that might be in this situation. I pray for other people around here that they don't turn into road rage and lose their cookies here. And I'm going to pray for my kids. How would your day be different if all that you changed in that whole scenario was what was going on between your two ears, right? It's different. And you feel different depending on what's going on between your two ears, even in that situation. And this is a minor situation of life. Your thoughts are powerful, ladies. And when you tell yourself negative thoughts, one of which I can't, and you use that as a regular word in your vocabulary, it will ruin your life.
It will. And isn't it amazing that we have choices about what we think about? And sometimes we can forget that we have choices. And just like you described those different scenarios, Leslie, I love that. It changes everything because it all starts here with our thoughts. And then what happens? Our feelings follow. Our feelings follow our thoughts. And so if we are in that space of, this is so unfair, I'm not going to, I'm going to miss my flight, I'm going to do all of this, as opposed to, wow, how could I use this time? And again, it's knowing the why. Why do you want to shift your mindset? Why is it that you want to do that?
Yeah, Tasha says, because you'll have a less stressful feeling, that's for sure. And that's a huge payoff. So if you can't control the situation, I'm not saying don't try to get out of the traffic jam, go to Google and find out if there's a different map somewhere if you're near an exit. I'm not saying don't try to change the situation if you can. But if you're in a situation that you have no power to change, then you decide to sit there, like we talked about in the webinar, Viktor Frankl, he's in the concentration camp. He can't change that. Some of you are in a destructive marriage. You can change that sometime when you leave, if that's what you choose to do, but you can't change him. So how do you be there in a mindset that says, all right, I'm in this destructive marriage. I accept that he doesn't love me and he's not going to change because I'm going to live in reality. That stinks. Just like being in a traffic jam stinks different ways. It stinks a whole lot worse to be in a marriage than in a traffic jam, right? But this stinks. Now, how am I going to use this in my life for good? So how am I going to use this afternoon for good in my life if I'm stuck in a traffic jam? creates an outcome that's different than if I'm just going to moan and complain while I'm in the traffic jam, right? And how am I going to use the lessons that I have to learn? So what do I need to learn? I might need to learn how to get a job. I might need to learn some skills to get back to school in order to qualify to get a job that can support me. I might need to learn how to set boundaries, because if I don't learn it with this relationship, I'm going to get another relationship that I'm being taken advantage of and used and abused. Now, I don't want that. Maybe I need to learn how to speak up for myself because I'm way too passive and he doesn't even know I'm so mad because I've never even told him, right? So there's things that you can learn even in those situations. And probably it would be easier for you to learn them in a group environment. That's why we learn these things in Empower to Change, so that you can be more proud of how you handle you at the end of the day, whether you're sitting in a traffic jam or whether you're sitting in your bedroom at night crying your eyes out because your husband just cursed you out. How are you going to handle you in those moments is powerful for you and for your story. It may not fix the outcome you want, but it changes the trajectory of your story.
It sure does. It sure does. You know, and it's strengthening that inner voice in your heart. It's getting stronger from the inside out. And that's something that Empower to Change does for all of us ladies. And it's really a powerful group. I love the word empower, because we can put power in us. God has given us so much power. We just need to unleash it sometimes. And we do that best in community. And to watch the women flourish in our groups is such a powerful process. You know, I remember when I was going through my coach training, you know, a decade ago, Leslie, and I was being coached by one of, you know, the finest coaches that I have ever met in my life. And he challenged me with some of the goings on in my life that were incredibly hard. And he looked me square in the eye, Leslie, and he said, Leanne, I want you to tell me, how is this situation for you? And it's kind of what you just said, but it took me back, because I had such a victim mentality about that, and that I can't do anything to make it any better. And when he challenged me with that, it changed my life. That one simple phrase, how is this for you, Leanne? How is this for you? How will God use it in your life?
Mm-hmm. And Jeannie's asking this question, not knowing if it makes a change, not knowing if making a change will hurt the kids more than staying in the marriage is scary. And this is where fear is another 4-letter word that gets the best of us. So you're living with the boogeyman of what if. But the boogeyman of what if is in every situation. So what if I take the vaccine? What if I don't take the vaccine? You have to make a decision, right? What if I put my kids in a Christian school? Or what if I don't put my kids in a Christian school and put them in the public school? Or what if I choose to homeschool? Am I going to mess up my kids? We don't know. We don't know, because we're not the only part of the equation. And so sometimes we get to the fork of the road and we have to make a decision. And so the next right decision is what we need to make. And so, and all we have is the wisdom we have in the moment. Like, if I can look back at my life with the wisdom I have now, I might have made some different decisions, but God didn't give me that wisdom then. So there must have been some lessons I needed to learn, or my kids needed to learn, even in the mistakes I made, that are for our good. So don't live in that circle of fear, because God promises you all things work together for good. And so even if you learned later, oh, I should have turned right and I turned left, that left turn is going to teach you some things. And it might also teach you to do a U-turn and to go back and turn right. That's fine. Most decisions are not permanently etched in stone that you can't turn around and go back and do a different decision. Now, divorce can be a permanently etched in stone decision. And so I don't take that lightly, and you shouldn't either. So the fact that you're struggling with this, but here's where we live a lie. It is better for my kids to live in an unhealthy environment at home, and an environment where they're scared, or they're being abused, or they're being demeaned or diminished, or their mother is, than it is for them to live in a healthy environment without that and go see their dad once a week or halftime. And so you don't know that, because some of that will depend on the ages of your children and the way they respond to this, right? So if I tell my child, I have 3 children, I have 2 children, but I'm going to make this up. If I tell my 3 children, no, you may not have a cookie, we're going to have dinner in 30 minutes. if that's the decision I make for my children and the best next right choice, can they have a cookie? No, nope, you can't have a cookie because I don't want you to ruin your appetite before dinner. And one child says to me, thanks, Mom. Okay. And another child says, you're the meanest mom in the world. I can't believe it. You would rather me starve? And the third kid just steals the cookie. You can't control what they do with what you do, right? You can't control because they have their own little sin nature and they're creating their own little story too. So all you can control is your job to be a good parent when you see that happening and try to correct it and teach it and discipline it however you can. But this is where we just get over functioning and that we take the blame. Like, oh, if I would have given him the cookie, he wouldn't have acted that way. Well, then maybe he would have hurt himself in other ways, of bad eating habits and all that. So we don't always know what the right choice is, but God promises to give us wisdom for the choices. I will instruct you and guide you in the way you should go. I will counsel you with my eye upon you. He promises us that in Psalm 32:8. So we don't have to walk in fear. We walk in faith, but we don't always have light for all of the outcomes of things. And this is where we get really messed up, is that when the outcome goes bad, we think to ourselves, I must have done the wrong thing. Like if I had written my book and the publisher didn't want it, and actually I submitted my first book to 12 publishers and 9 of them didn't want it. Right? They didn't want it. Does that mean I shouldn't have written it? Or did that mean I just didn't find the right publisher yet? Right? We can't make stories up about the outcome necessarily. We just walk by faith. You know, Stephen did the right thing and he got stoned. Didn't mean he did the wrong thing. Right? We have to decide, Lord, in wisdom and in strength, how do I walk forward in my life in the best decisions I know to make? And God says, ask if you need wisdom. Read Proverbs and follow the wisdom there. And generally, your life will go well, but not always.
Not always. And, I was so thankful. I shared about driving in Denver traffic and I was afraid to do that. And I told myself I couldn't do it. And then GPS came out. And then my daughter, right, she was visiting a college. We flew into Nashville. I got that wonderful Garmin that sat on the, dash of our car. And we drove all over the place. We visited everything and everywhere. And it gave me some of that confidence. And here's the beautiful part. If we ever made a wrong turn, all we heard was recalculating. And it got us back on track, right?
But doesn't the Holy Spirit do that for us? The Holy Spirit does that for us.
That's what I was just going to say, is that God, we can recalculate with God. He is going to guide and direct us every step of the way. And it's really powerful. Like we were talking about our group coaching programs, it's really neat in the group as we gather together, a real small group of women in our coaching groups. And when one gal shares a thought or idea that she is learning, sometimes it helps us all recalculate and recalibrate because of what somebody shares. So there's this collective wisdom when we invite the Holy Spirit in and other people into our lives to help us take that next best step. Because some of it is uber scary. Yeah. Really,
And I'm looking at the feed right now. We're going to switch to Q&A now for a minute. So Julie, if you can make sure that Leanne has those questions. But we're seeing aha moments in the feed. So we're seeing, oh, I didn't think about it that way. Or, oh, that's so helpful. Or, yeah, that's that support, that learning together. This is sort of, in a very virtual kind of way, this is sort of what our coaching groups do too. When you're listening to your teacher, or your coach, or you're listening to us, and then you're listening to each other, and you're getting ideas of how to move through some things, through those ideas of one another. Like you're hearing someone else's story and saying, well, she did it, I could do it. Or she tried it, I could try. And it begins to help you realize you're not alone. We all struggle. We all fear. We all tell ourselves we can't at times. But if we can together, collectively say, I want to grow, I want to learn, I want to gain wisdom, then we get that from one another far more powerfully than we get that alone. You will learn more in this Facebook Live than if you would have just sat all by yourself and thought about what's the 4-letter word that will ruin your life and picked one, fear, can't, whatever it was, and then thought about it a little bit. That's not the same. And so that's why I believe that these coaching groups can be so life-changing, because they are the collective journey of Christian women who are in similar life settings, who want to grow and be all that God calls them, who don't know how, or feel stuck, or have been traumatized in some way and have lost their ability to jump over the fence like we learned in the webinar. And they need some coaching in learning how to remind themselves that they can do it. No one can jump over your fence for you, but they can pull your leg over and show you the muscle movement that has to happen in order for you to jump over the fence, if you forgot how to do that in a traumatized way. We don't do trauma counseling in our group. So if you need any kind of specific trauma help in your life, that's something that you would have to do with a licensed therapist. So, but we do trauma-informed work, and that we're going to talk about trauma a little bit and triggers and how you can manage your triggers and how you don't have to react all the time. When you are triggered, you can learn to calm yourself down. That's taking ownership of your life versus just being a victim of your own amygdala that's flying off the handle all the time, and you don't know how to get it back in line with the rest of your brain. Right? And you're always living in regret that you handled yourself poorly in a situation that maybe you could have had other choices if you could be empowered to change that. So we invite you to go to leslievernick.com/change to learn about Empower to Change, to learn when the groups are, to see what spots are available left, and see if you want to sign up. I would really encourage you to do that before too long, because a lot of the groups have already filled up to maximum of 15, and there's a couple groups that are open yet. And so if you're sure you want to do that, then check it out now so that you can sign up. But we have some questions on the feed. So you want to read one, Leanne?
You bet. Is it okay to not confront a destructive person during a separation period?
Well, Proverbs has an interesting verse in, I think it's in Proverbs 9 or 10, somewhere around there. It says, don't confront a mocker because they will just hurt you. And then the next one says, confront a mocker and they will grow wise. So which is it? So I think you have to know how your ability to be heard with this person has gone in the past. So I can't say always no and always yes, but I think that's the nuances that you have to learn in scripture. So God tells us to speak the truth in love. God tells us to go to your brother if they sinned against you and win them over. But he also tells us in Matthew 7, for example, don't keep casting your pearls before swine lest they turn on you and trample you. And so if you've shared your heart, if you've shared your concerns, if you've said, this isn't working for me and I can't live like this, and you've been mocked or you've been ignored or you've been threatened, no, I don't think you need to keep saying the same thing over and over again. But if you're the kind of person who's been passive your whole life, like I had a woman who I worked with years ago, and she just left her husband. Before she left him, she never said, this isn't okay with me. I don't like this. Stop doing this. I'm unhappy. She never said anything. She just placated and pleased until she had it up to here and said, I'm done. I'm leaving, and wouldn't talk to him again. And that's not healthy either. And so I think it's important for you to discern the level of communication that you've tried to engage in with this person to see if reconciliation is possible. And if everything that you've done has resulted in mockery and disdain and deaf ears and criticism and ignoring you and all of that, and the same old, then I don't think you need to have any further conversation. Your actions are saying, I'm not doing this anymore. And you separated.
Yeah, that was great. So here's another question. How do I begin implementing this when can't seems so ingrained in my thoughts?
Yeah. Any thoughts, Leanne?
Well, join Empowered to Change group, because I'll tell you what, we debunk a lot of the limiting beliefs that could hold you back. And we walk with you so you can implement everything that you're learning. So oftentimes you can join us on our lives and read Leslie's blog, read her books, and they're all amazing. And we're so thankful that you didn't give up, Leslie. We're so thankful that you persevered. And so if you really want to start implementing, then get other people around you. I often ask the girls I work with, do you have a team of people around you that will help you accomplish what it is you want to work toward? And in Empowered to Change, we do a lot of practicing over and over again. And there's so many tools within our 6-month coaching program that you get to practice each and every day. And we tell you, start small. So my one thought to you would be, start saying I can, or I won't, or I am able, or I am not able, to the small things. That's one idea. What else do you got, Leslie?
Yeah, I loved your idea. Leanne and I both play pickleball, and we can go out and play every day if we want, but we're not going to improve if we don't pay attention to certain things. So, so this is life. We go out and just do life. We go out and have relationships. We have conversations in our head. We have conversations with other people, and we do them like we always do, just like we play pickleball, like we always play pickleball, right? Until we stop and we reflect and perhaps have a coach say, the way that you're serving is really not going to serve you well because you're serving way too short, and that person's going to get the ball back fast and you're going to lose that point. Let me show you how to serve on a longer serve so that you have more space to get up to the line. And then let's practice that. Let's practice those serves. Let's do 25 a day. Let's do 50 a day. Let's do 100 a day, so that you're making sure that your muscle memory now is remembering when you go in to play a pickleball game, oh, I've got to serve long, not like I used to serve. So this is what we're talking about changing. So when we just live life, we just live life unconsciously. We just do what we always do, right? And we think as we always think. So empowered to change is like coming into a place where you have an evaluated period where you say, okay, this isn't working. Either I know it's not working because I keep hitting the ball in the net, or I think it's working, but the other person is telling me it's not working. And I have to evaluate that. Is it me? Is it them? And so we slow things down. We begin to look at your thought life. We begin to look at your feelings and the way you process things. We look at how you react to things. We look at what you want to do to grow and how you want to be different. And then we start practicing those skills that we teach you in the group process so that you can practice them. Because I'm not going to, in a crisis, in a game, I'm just going to go back to how I always, because we have muscle memory, we always go back to how we always are, right? And so we have to develop new muscle memory, cognitively as well as physical, to handle ourselves in situations in a different way. And we have to have the tools to know how to do that and the space to practice it. If you want to get better at anything, whether it's piano, whether it's art, whether it's pickleball, or whether it's life, we can't just do it in our mind and become different. We have to practice new skills. Even piano, my daughter took piano lessons for 15 years. And when she was making a mistake on a piece, her teacher would say, here, let's take this 3 measures, and you're going to have to practice this, 50 times a day, just these 3 measures over and over and over again. So the corrections were in her finger memory so that automatically she just played it the right way now. And so you're going to have to get some new thought life patterns in your head and new ways of thinking about yourself, about other people, about the way that you handle things, so that you can be empowered to do it different. Because just thinking about it doesn't give you the power to do it differently.
That's right. Well, and we went to a pickleball camp to specifically learn, right? It was like a little coaching nucleus. And I remember at that camp, they told us that you need to drill and practice 4 times the amount that you actually play games. And we don't always do that. And that's what, in Empowered to Change, just think about it. It could be 6 months of practicing. Imagine where you would be next December if you have done Empowered to Change this time and really had a group to help you practice that.
Yeah.
Because life happens. Relationships are hard, whether they're at work or at home, in your neighborhood, in your community. Relationships are hard.
Yeah.
And so when we can learn to do them a little bit different than what we've always done, because if we always do what we've always done, we'll always be right where we are. And I know for me, I keep saying I want 1% stronger, Leanne. I want to be a 1% more wise woman every single day. And the only way that I can do that is if I start putting into practice what it is that I'm learning. And so that implementation piece is so big. Otherwise, this is just information.
Yeah.
It's just information for you. And
Yeah.
so we're going to encourage you to do that.
Yeah. And information is wonderful. I mean, you can sit and watch YouTube's,
Yep.
all kinds of information on communication skills, on narcissism, on passivity, on, all the things that you might want to learn about so that you can grow, but actually doing anything different with that information, like watching a cooking class, if you watch a cooking class on cutting up a chicken, because you don't know how to cut up a chicken, you're not going to remember how to cut up a chicken unless you got a chicken that day and you're going to cut it up with the video and learn. And even then you might forget unless you do it a couple times, right? If you don't do it, like there's certain things I only make for Thanksgiving. And every time I make it, I'm like, oh, how did I do that again? I can't remember because I didn't practice it all year long. And so I think it's important that we understand that when we're trying to do new things, especially things that are hard, it's not that we can't. It may be that we can't do it all by ourselves.
Oh, I love that. And so I don't know, some of you have seen me do this when I've been live with Leslie before, but there are real can'ts. Like I can't play basketball. I'm 5'3". I will never be a
Well, you
basketball.
can play, but you can't play like a big person could play.
Exactly. I'm not gonna be on an NBA team, right? That's not possible. I have my limitations. But what I can do, like Leslie said, I can go out there and shoot hoops with my grandkids, right? I can go out there and play horse with my friends. I can. And so cutting away part of that tea. So what can I do with the desires that are deep within me?
Yeah. Any other questions?
Yes. We've got another one here. What do you do if you need to make an important decision, like filing for divorce, but you aren't hearing the Holy Spirit on this and you want to follow God's leading? What things can you do to help make this decision and feel good about what you decide?
So I would ask you to answer 4 questions. So at first I would ask you to go to James 1, and it says, if anyone lacks wisdom, ask God and he will give you it abundantly. So you need wisdom in this decision. And so I would ask you to do a couple of reflection exercises. One would be, why do I want to get divorced? Like, why do I want to get divorced? Right? What's wrong in our marriage that can't be fixed? And it might be because your husband's not willing to fix anything, right? It might be that he's broken trust, he's a scary adulterer, whatever those big deal breakers are, and he's unwilling to change that, and you're afraid to live with him, or don't feel safe. Safety and trust are extremely important in a long-term relationship. And if those have been broken, it might be that, it might be other things. So you have to ask yourself, what is the reason I can't be in relationship with this person? Right? So Matthew 18, for example, Jesus says that when you're in a relationship with someone, when someone sins against you, go to your brother. You're in a relationship with your brother, go to them and talk to them. And if they listen, then you can work on this relationship. But if they refuse to listen, then maybe you need to bring it to the church or up the ante. And if they still refuse, separation. And if they still refuse to listen, he says, treat them as a pagan or a tax collector. In other words, the relationship is broken. Now, you're still legally married to someone, but you don't trust them. You might have to love your enemy, but they're an enemy. And who wants to live with an enemy, right? So I don't know what your particular story is about all of that, but I would ask myself, what is the reason that this relationship is not repairable? All right. And then go to 4 questions. What's the best thing that could happen if I get divorced? What's the worst thing that could happen if I get divorced? And pray over these questions with the Lord. What's the best thing that could happen if I stay married? As it is right now. What's the worst thing that could happen if I stay married right now? And then look at those answers, journal those answers, and really ask the Lord, there's pros and cons, right? And does fear decide, or does faith decide? Like if I climb Camelback Mountain, the worst thing that could happen is I could kill myself, right? That's a pretty big risk. But am I not going to do it because of that little teeny weeny possibility that I might do that? If I fly to a speaking event, the plane could crash. That's the worst thing that could happen, right? But am I not going to do it because of a little tiny percent? So I'd have to look at all of that because, that you could live in your house all day and your house could fall down. So you can't live in the what if in terms of the worst case scenario of the worst thing that you happened, but you want to think about it. And if that happened, so I might say, if that happened, if I did fall off Camelback Mountain trying, would it be worth it to me? Right? Would it be worth it to me because I'm living an adventurous life versus a scary life and a fearful life? Is it worth it to me if I'm doing God's work and I'm in a speaking engagement and my airplane crashes? Is it worth it to me? Of course it would be. It wouldn't be, I think, if I knew the plane was mechanically unsound, I wouldn't get on it. But if that's what God ordains, then I'm not going to worry about that. So is it in my control or is it not in my control, sort of thing? So I think asking yourself those 4 questions, really praying over God's wisdom, asking yourself, are you staying put because you're fearful of your safety or your, all those kind of questions. I don't know enough details to know what your hesitation is. And ask God to give you the green light. We've talked to lots of women who had that green light, who really knew that God was saying, just like Joseph woke up and said, the angel told Joseph, hey, Herod is seeking to kill baby Jesus. Flee the prudency, danger, and take refuge. Flee. It's time to go.
So good. And you talked about, counting the cost, right? Because there are advantages and disadvantages to everything. And I love those 4 questions. They are a game changer when we have big decisions to make like that. And, something else that we do in our Empowered to Change group is we talk a lot about your values and virtues. And you're going to know the reasons for your whys and your whats when you know what your values and virtues are.
Yeah.
Because when we are in alignment with those, we can make empowered, conscious decisions as opposed to letting fear decide.
Yeah. Someone's asking, love my talk, longtime subscriber to my channel. Are only Christians allowed in the Empower to Change group? I would say if you're hanging out with me and you're okay with what I'm saying, you'll be fine in the Empower to Change group, whether you're a practicing Christian or not. We say that because we do use the Bible. We do talk about God. We do talk about being God-centered. And if that hasn't turned you off or offended you and you still hang out with us, you'd be fine in the Empower to Change group.
Absolutely. We've got another question. Are you ready for another one?
Yeah.
All right. I have learned that I can't change my husband, but I do try and wait for God to change, but do I try and wait for God to change him?
Depends. It depends on whether he's asking God to change him or not, right? So God never, I've said this a million times, but I'll say it again. I've read my Bible from cover to cover many times, and I have never seen anybody changed by God who didn't want to be changed, who didn't ask to be changed. Even the Apostle Paul, when he met God, all right, so Jesus said, Paul, why are you persecuting me? Well, Paul humbled himself and said, oh my gosh, you're real. This is Jesus. And he humbled himself and submitted himself to the process of 3 years of change, right? When he went into the desert and spent time with the Lord. So we look at Paul's transformation, but it didn't, like, God didn't zap Paul and say, I'm changing you. He encountered God, and Paul submitted to God and wanted to be changed. So I think this is where we have this fantasy that if I pray hard enough, God will change him. And if you pray, God will meet your husband. He will encounter him, but your husband has to bow his knee. And oftentimes a husband or a destructive, wicked person will not do that. I mean, God himself came to, different people in the Bible, and Jesus came to Judas. He didn't change. So I think that we have to let go of the hope that if I pray hard enough, God will change my husband without his knowing about it. That's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. So I think you can pray that God would do what it takes to wake your husband up. And that might even mean you leaving him. In fact, and I'm not making this up. And it's not that might not be possible. I just have never heard it. So in 40 years of counseling, coaching, and in this ministry, I have never heard of a destructive husband or wife waking up because of the goodness of their spouse in terms of putting up with it, no boundaries. So goodness would be not the right, by the sacrifice of their spouse. Okay. Usually they wake up when their spouse says, I love you, but I can't live with you. And if this is the kind of man you want to be, so it's not calling him a scoundrel or anything like that. If this is the man you want to be, if it's in your heart to lie, in your heart to cheat, and if it's in your heart to, be scary and ugly, and I can't live like that. I'm not called to live like that. I'm called to live in peace, and I'm called to live in safety. And I can't live in peace and safety with you out of control in your temper, drinking all the time, whatever it is, on the internet with pornography. I can't live in a relationship of peace and safety. You can live in a relationship without romantic love. All right, you can do that. But you can't live in a relationship without peace and safety and trust. So if that's going on in your home, then it might be that conversation. And if you don't want to rebuild broken trust and you don't want to be that kind of man, I will have to accept that. That's That's the reality of life. Jesus talked to the rich young ruler. The rich young ruler says, what do I need to do to have a relationship with God? He told him, he said, don't want to do that. And didn't Jesus go trailing after him saying, well, I hope you'll change someday. Let's just have a relationship anyway. He didn't. He said, I love you, but goodbye. He let him go. Right? And so we can't have a relationship with everyone. We can only have a relationship with someone who wants to have a relationship with us. We can have ministry to anybody who'll let us. We can have ministry to homeless people. We can have ministry to drug addicts. We can have ministry. We don't have a relationship with them unless there's some mutuality and reciprocity, right? And so understand that in the marriage context, that relationship, if it's broken, needs to be repaired, or you're just living with an enemy.
So good. So good. And yeah, somebody is not going to change if they don't want to change. And sometimes, let's see, I love how you give us these tools, these nuggets about how to say things a little bit differently. And this is where, ladies, even where the can't word can be a really good thing, right? What you will and you will not put up with, certain things, like Leslie just mentioned. I'm not able to, I think what I will have to accept. I love that, Leslie, when you said, I will have to accept that that's the man you want to be. And I can't live with a man who chooses to watch pornography. I can't, and that's where knowing who you are from the inside out and how God uniquely created.
And it's not can't. I won't live with a man who treats me this way. And this is the kind of man you want to be. And I won't put myself through that. It's not, I can't. I can. I don't want to.
I can't. Right. That's better. Yeah, that's even better, is replacing, like you said at the beginning of this live, replace the can't to an I won't. So good. Because we can do just about anything, but whether or not we choose to. We've got another question here. You ready for another question?
Yep.
Right. Can I just say one? I want to give another plug just for our group coaching programs, because I see some questions or some thoughts about it in the feed. So leslievernick.com/change. And I want to give a hot tip. If you are here live with us and this is resonating with you, and it's something that you would feel like is your next best step to walk into 2022 empowered to make the changes that we're talking about here. If you use this code 50 off 2C, when you go to register, you get $50 off of the program. So I just wanted to throw that out there. And I got the big thumbs up from our tech team that is what they wanted me to announce. So if you are within the sound of our voice, that's an opportunity for you.
That's a special perk for just being on this live, because we haven't offered that before. So I would grab it if you are interested. And yes, this will help you set boundaries with other people. You've got a lot going on. Somebody asked a question in the feed. She's got estranged children. She's got a mom with Alzheimer's. I think that was you, Deborah. Yes, this program has a whole unit on boundaries and how to set them, and where you can set them for you and enforce them for you. You can't enforce boundaries on other people. So that's where it gets messy and mixed up. Say the gift offer again, please, she said.
The gift offer again. So it says use the code 50 off E2C for $50 off if you are watching this live.
So it's 50OFFE2 change. E2C. Okay. Maybe can you put it in the banner? Do you have a control over that, or do I have to do that?
I think I can stick it right here. You bet.
Okay. So some people are asking, how do I know he's really changed? And change is hard. And so that's why we offer this group. So if your husband isn't really doing the work of change, which means being accountable, having some structure for learning how to do it differently. So if he's saying, I agree, I drink too much, or I agree that my temper's out of control, or I agree that you shouldn't have to live with a cheater or a serial adulterer, and I'll change. But there's no energy put towards changing. Like there's no counseling, there's no coaching, there's no group he's going to. Just like you're going to have to put energy and money towards changing. If you want to change you, Empower to Change isn't the only resource, but it is a resource for you. But if he's not doing anything to make, it's like somebody saying, well, sure, I'd love to play golf. I don't know how to play golf. I'd like to learn how to play golf, but I'm never going to pick up a golf club, and I'm never going to go on a golf course, and I'm never going to hire a golf coach. Do you think someone's going to learn how to play golf? No. So we can say whatever we want to say. We can say, yeah, I'd love to play piano one day. I would. I'd love to play better piano, but if I never sign up for piano lessons and I don't have a piano in my house, it's not likely that it's going to happen. So I think this is where we allow words without actions to confuse us. And John the Baptist said it best when he said, prove by the way that you live that you've repented of your sin and turned to Christ. And we don't repent. I mean, we repent for our sin, but we don't change perfectly, just like an empowered to change. You're going to come into this group and you're going to still say can't sometimes, and you're going to still lose your temper sometimes, and you're still going to, get triggered sometimes and react when you wanted to respond. That's just life. You're going to fall back into old habits. Just like when I'm playing pickleball and I know I'm supposed to hit the racket this way, but I'm hitting it this way. You fall back into old habits sometimes, right? The difference is I know I'm in this old habit. I know I did it wrong, and immediately go, oh, I got to correct that. Whereas if I make excuses, well, I'm just tired, or it's your fault I went that way, I haven't really gotten it that I'm responsible to change the way I push my racket, right? Even when the ball comes at me fast, if I want to play pickleball and I go like this, I'm going to hit into the net. So when someone's saying they want to change and they fall back into old ways, do they recognize it? Do they correct it? If you give them feedback, you're hitting the racket wrong, or you're scaring me. Do they receive that because they want to change, or do they just, oh, you're always so critical, I can never do anything right? Well, then they don't really want to change. If I want to change and I go to a pickleball camp and I'm paying big bucks to go to much more than you're paying for Empower to Change. If I go to a pickleball camp and I'm spending, that $2,000 to go for 4 days on a pickleball camp or 3 days on a pickleball camp, and my coach is saying, you're hitting the ball wrong, I better listen. I better listen and practice the new way if I really want that. So I think those energies and those efforts show you it doesn't matter what they say. There's a lot, and I'm sincere. I would love to do a lot of things. I would love to golf. I live in a golf course. I've never been out my door playing golf. I would love to learn, but I don't want to learn that much that I want to hire a coach and actually have to do it. It's something that I can say easily, but I don't have to work at it.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're getting questions about the cost of the program.
Yeah, the cost of the program is $14.97. And that includes 12 90-minute, twice a month coaching spots. You can find out all the information. So I don't really want to spend time on this Facebook Live talking about it. If you're that interested, just press the link, go to lesliebernick.com/change, and all the information, all the breakdowns of what you get is in that, page. So we don't have to spend time talking about that here. If you're interested, go there and you can find out about there.
Great. So what if my husband goes to counseling and agrees, but the minimizing and justifying starts?
Then I would say that he's still not convinced he has a problem, right? He's still not convinced that he has a problem. He's denying it and he's excusing it as somehow life or you make him do that. Right? So by justifying it's, well, I was just stressed, or you just pushed my buttons, or it's your fault that I act this way, which is very typical. So understand that what has to change in an abuser is not their behaviors. I mean, we're grateful that they're not, pointing a gun at our head anymore, or they're not threatening our lives or those kind of things. We're grateful for that. So I'm not saying that doesn't help. But what we're looking really with working with an abuser is we're looking to see a heart and mind change. So an abuser feels entitled to treat people bad when he doesn't like what they're doing, right? So if I don't like what my kid is doing, I have a response to that, right? If I don't like what my kid is doing, I can say, stop doing that. I can say, go to your room. I can say, take a time out. I can say, you're grounded. I can say, this isn't okay. I can say all those things. I can also say, you're a lousy kid. I wish I never had you. You deserve to die. You're worthless. You're so stupid, right? So our kids are going to act wrong at times, and how we handle that is our responsibility. You are not going to be the perfect wife. You're always going to do something at some time that aggravates your husband, just like he's going to do that for you, and your kids are going to do that for you, all right? But how you handle your side of the street is up to you. And so when he blames you, well, you made me be, what he's saying in his mind is, you have to be perfect and do everything I want the way I want, when I want, in order for me to treat you decent. Well, who can live up to that? So that's not a behavior thing. That's a mindset that has to be worked on. I'm entitled to punish you when you fall short. And I'll do it in a cruel, critical way. That's not true. He's not entitled to punish you. You are going to fall short. We all fall short. All of us fall short. He does too, but he doesn't. And if you were to criticize him falling short, that's wrong. So you're in like this pot of hot water and there's no getting out unless you jump out and do something different, right? So this is what if you're in that situation, Empowered to Change will help you learn to do that. But if you're not in that situation and you have a decent marriage or there's other issues in your life that you want to change, Empowered to Change will help you work on that as well. So it's not just about relational issues. It's about helping you to be healthy and strong so that you can handle life, whatever life is for you, whether it's cancer, whether it's a crummy husband, whether it's estranged adult children, whether it's, whatever it is that you're learning to write your part of the story in a way that you're feeling proud of, even if the outcome you're not happy with. So if you stick up for yourself at Christmas and say, I just had to stick up for myself with one of my kids who expected something for Christmas that they're not getting, and I'm like, I thought Christmas was supposed to be a gift, not an ask. And I'm not willing to do that, and I felt okay with the way I stood up for myself, but one of my kids didn't like it, and so I think that that's going to happen at times. Your spouse isn't going to like it. Your kid isn't going to like it. Sometimes you have to say that at work and the person you work with isn't going to like it. And you have to decide, how did I handle it? And how did they handle their side of the street? And I can't control their side of the street. All I can control is my side of the street.
Right. We can really observe what other people's reactions are to our I won'ts.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's going to show us a lot. And then, ladies, this is for us too. How do we respond to other people when they give us their won'ts? And that's what we work on Empowered to Change. And so, I love part of your question, or one of the questions earlier was about trying. And I just want to tell you, sometimes, what I think it was Yoda, there is no try. You kind of step in there and do that. And what we talk about in Empowered to Change is all about training you to live your life focused on your relationships with God. We were created for relationship, and we were created to be healthy in our relationships, and we can learn to be healthier than we are today.
Yeah, Jeannie's asking a very important question, so I want to just take it from the feed. So Jeannie, even if he isn't making an effort, he's not actively harming me anymore, just ignoring me. Might the children do better if you stay? This is a question social science research suggests that they do better if you stay, as long as there's not active violence in the home. Okay, so you're right. So this is in our groups, when we talk about options, we have an option called staying well. And I think it's a noble sacrifice. If you don't have a great marriage, maybe it's not harmful in terms of violence and attacking you and financial mismanagement, all those things where you're having a lot of negative consequences. It's just indifference. Like he's being, doing his thing and he expects you to take the care of the kids and he's still financially responsible and he's, or maybe he's even cheating on you with somebody else at times and you're not allowing him to have a sexual relationship with you. But for the sake of the kids, he's a pretty decent dad. I would say that it would be a noble sacrifice to give up hope on the marriage, but still honor the family. There's a family here. And I think that times family is important, and it is important for children to be raised in a family atmosphere where they're feeling safe and secure and they have the resources they need from both a mother and a father. And so there is a time when we say, well, I'm not going to have a great marriage, but he's a pretty decent dad. He supports the family. He provides for us. He takes care of us. We don't have much in common, or we don't have much communication, but he's not dangerous. He's not putting me down in front of the children. He's not undermining my authority as a mom. I'm not undermining his authority as a dad. And he functions as a good dad. Maybe it's worth me giving up some of my, dreams of having this great romantic marriage and still have a decent family. Right. And I think that's a noble thing. I think we see lots of biblical characters who did that. So I think we have to weigh what's the worst thing that can happen, what's the best thing that can happen, and can I live like this? Can I live in a D+ marriage and maybe a B+ family? right? If it's good for my kids and if it's good for all the other things, the reasons that we've talked about. And so I don't think that's a bad decision. And that's what makes me a little bit different than a lot of the other people who talk about, being in an abusive relationship, that I just have to leave. I have to leave. You don't have to leave. You don't ever have to leave. You can stay and be as unhealthy as you want to be. That's your choice. But I think that if you're in danger and you're being harmed, or your children are being harmed and you're being harmed in front of them, or they're being harmed, then there is no staying well. There is no staying well. But if you can accept his limitations or his indifference, not accept like I like it, but accept it that I'll live with it in a good way. Just like accepting the traffic jam. I don't like it, but I can live with it in a good way. And it's not freaking me out all the time, or it's not throwing me into a depression where I want to, end my life, or any of those kind of things. You can have your life and he can have his life, and it may be very separate, but he's a decent dad and he's good to the children and they love him. I think that's worth fighting for.
Right. And then we get to build our lives. So if it's a D- marriage, you can still build you up and surround, get to know thyself. I've often shared with Leslie that when I was doing some of my own work and in coaching programs and all of that, it really helped me to meet myself again, because so many of the things in my life had prevented me from really getting to know myself. Mm-hmm. And now I know what is going to help me live my best life. And that is surrounding myself and building into my life the things that are going to nourish my soul. I want to be able to say at the end of my day, when I put my head on the pillow, it is well with my soul tonight. Mm-hmm. And, am I taking the steps that I want to take in order to build the life that I want to live instead mm-hmm. of take a vacation from?
Yeah. And one of the things I really love about Leanne is, that she, and this might be true for many of you too, is that she's very intentional about her girlfriend relationships. And she's very much, living her life to the fullest. And so some of you might be, kind of keeping the candle out for this wonderful marriage. And maybe that's the place where you have to accept that, we have a safe enough marriage in terms of financially safe, spiritually safe, emotionally safe, and physically safe enough marriage that I don't feel in hyper alert harm, in danger all the time. I'm not aroused that way. My amygdala's not firing all the time. It's a little boring, or he's not all that interested in me, or we don't ever do anything fun together. Those kind of disappointments, right? They're real disappointments. Mm-hmm. But I can develop a wonderful group of women friends. I can have ministry. I can do work. I can have purpose and meaning and keep my kids in a safe home and, help them get to college and get off on their adult adventure in a good way without bitterness that I don't have the kind of marriage I want to have. You can do that. We will support that. We call that in my book, staying well. We call that in Power to Change, staying well. It's not that you stay well getting a marriage. It's stay well in spite of the way your marriage is, but how you are in that place for however long it is. Just like if you're going to stay well in a traffic jam, you can stay well in a traffic jam or you can not stay well in a traffic jam. The traffic jam's not changing. So that's the part that you have to accept, that it's not changing. Now, could it all of a sudden open up and change? It could, but don't count on it. Don't count on it. Right? But you stay well without resentment that he's not doing the work that you want him to do. Right? He's not harming you, but he's not doing the work he needs to do to be a full, whole man in a relationship. But you are going about your life. You're building relationships. You're having a good time. You're hiking. You're playing pickleball. You're going on trips. You're doing things that are nourishing to your soul. You're happy. You're a good mom. You're functioning well. That's a great thing. But if you're not doing that, then you need some help.
That's right. So good, Leslie. Well, it's very powerful, these different seasons of life that we go through.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Janet, let me just go back to this marriage thing. I don't think that's a very good modeling for children to see that kind of marriage, though. It depends on what they see. And I think it depends on whether you're honest with them. So I think you can be honest with them and say, I hope you have a better marriage than Dad and I have had. Yeah. We haven't had the best marriage, but it's been good enough that I think it was better for you to stay in the home with both parents. And I think you can say what it was so that they can say, that's not the kind of marriage I want. And I want something better and help them to do that. So don't lie and pretend that we have this wonderful marriage, but you don't have to demonize and degrade your husband. He's just a jerk, and I have to stay with him because of you guys. That would be just as abusive. So you're honest that, if they say, well, how come you and dad never go out? Or I never see you and dad kiss, and say, yeah, we don't have the best relationship, but we both love you and we want to be good parents. And we believe keeping the family together for you guys until you're grown. I don't know what will happen after you're grown, but right now we believe it's the best for you and our family for us to stay together. And you can be very real with them. And therefore they're learning to also live in reality that some parents don't have a great marriage, but thank God my parents are good parents. I do better with two good parents than only one parent, right? Children do better with two biological parents, that's true, than one parent. So if you have two good parents and not such a good marriage, that still can work for the kids' benefit, as long as you're honest with them and not pretending that you have this great marriage. Because once the kids leave the home, the stress in the marriage may usually get worse. And so, and sometimes it doesn't. He continues to be indifferent and you just continue to live your life. And sooner or later, one of you are going to go. That's the end of the marriage then, but not the end of the family.
Right. So good. So good. So there's a lot, you're getting some thank yous for the answer. And Leslie, I just appreciate your candidness to really speak to the heart of the matter here. It's really important. So thank you for always bringing.
Yeah, and I think that's so important because we as women so have bought into a mindset of Hollywood and Harlequin about romantic relationships and this soulmate story about a husband. When you look at if you honestly look at even Sarah and Abraham, they didn't have a great marriage.
No.
And there's some real positive proof that they actually separated after Abraham did his wacko job with Isaac and was going to kill him. And, Abraham believed he was doing that unto the Lord. And Sarah was like, what are you doing? This is dangerous. And there's some speculation that they had separation because after that, he lived one place, she lived another. So, but they were together for most of Isaac's life. And some people say Isaac went to that whole thing when he was around 12, and other people say he was an adult. So we don't know that. But if you look at a lot of marriages, they weren't the best marriages. And so there's reasons for that. Both women weren't allowed to get divorced in the Old Testament. And so God put other protections in for them. And they were thrown away by their husbands when they were discarded. And that put them in a very perilous economic and social situation. But I think we've been fed a bill of goods of what marriage is really supposed to be like. And, and it's not that way. It's not that way. I've been married 46 years this week. 46 years to the same person, and there's good times and bad times, and there's close times and not so close times, and that's just reality. But I think that's learning to grow through living with other people. Sometimes I get along really well with my children. Sometimes I don't get along really well with my children because we're all different and we all have things to learn from each other. And so I think that's that push and pull of family life and church life. We don't get along with everybody in church. We don't like everybody in church. We may not like everybody in our family, but we are family. And we try to do family together if possible, if it's safe. So when you have, a big family gathering at Christmas and there might be someone who's mentally ill or someone who's alcoholic or whatever, as long as they're not dangerous. So if they come with the knife or, they're paranoid and scary, then you don't invite them or they don't come. But if they're there and they're just different or they're not as fun as you'd like them to be, but they're there, they're family. And I think that's part of what we do in family is Paul says, put up with one another. We put up with one another. We forbear, we endure, we love, and we care for them, even if they're not all that appealing, as long as they're not harmful and dangerous to our well-being. Then that's not possible without really, really good boundaries.
Right. Tammy asked this question: does feeling hopeless mean my faith is weak?
Well, it depends. Feeling hopeless in what? So here's the mistake that we make. And with this, maybe we'll close, Leanne, because it's getting late and I have another appointment. But let's look at the story of Elijah, because Elijah went from hopeful to hopeless pretty quick. And so what are you putting your hope in? And so what have you lost your hope in is the question you want to ask yourself if that's a lack of faith, right? So in Elijah's story in 1 Kings 19, Elijah put his hope Remember, he was the prophet of God. He's a man just like us, so we can really relate to his story. So he's a prophet of God. God is working some amazing things in his life. And he challenges the prophets of Baal, and he challenges King Ahab and Queen Jezebel to understand that God is God, because right at that time, Israel had become a Baal worshiping God. They weren't honoring God as God. They were worshiping Baal. And so Elijah stages this big Mount Carmel moment where the fire comes down and the flames lick up the water and all that, to prove to the prophets of Baal that their God was not as powerful as Jehovah God, and to prove to Ahab and Jezebel that they were wrong in worshiping Baal. And his hope was that that would result in repentance, right? Well, you know how that went. It didn't result in repentance. And Elijah went into the pit of despair. And you can read the story yourself. He was a wreck because he hoped in the wrong thing. And so if you're hopeless that your husband's going to change, that might not be despair. That may be realistic. That there's no evidence that he is changing. There's no, I mean, if I'm hopeless that Joe Biden's going to be different than Joe Biden is, or President Trump is going to be different than President, I'm pretty hopeless because they're pretty committed to the way they are. I don't think either one of them is going to change, right? So for me to be hopeless that somehow they're going to change, they have no interest in changing. They have no desire to change. It's good for me to be hopeless, right? In that area. So what you put your hope on is sometimes the problem, not that you have hopelessness. So I don't know what you put your hope on, but this is why we talk about letting go of the outcome. If my well-being is based on how things work out, then I'm putting my hope on the wrong thing. So if my peace and joy and well-being is depending on you changing, or you becoming the person I want you to become, or you meeting my needs in the way that I need all the time, you're going to feel awful most of the time because it's not going to happen. All right. So here's where victim mindset moves into owner mindset. And when I am disappointed that you failed me, or when I am disappointed that you're not the husband I want you to be, or the politician I want you to be, or the man of God I want you to be, or whatever that Ahab and Jezebel didn't repent like Elijah wanted them to be, right? They didn't do it. Then the next step is Elijah was correct. God said, Elijah, you're not seeing things correctly. Put your hope in God. Put your hope in God, not what God will do, because that's our limiting belief. He should do this. He will do that. He will bring them to their senses. He didn't. He didn't. Or maybe he showed up and they still didn't repent, right? We don't know. But put your hope in God and not what God will do. So if your hope in God has failed, then that's a lack of faith. But if you're putting your hope in what God will do and that's been disappointed, then understand that maybe you're not supposed to hope in that. The other story that you might want to look at in the Bible is Lamentations chapter 3, because Jeremiah did lose his hope in God there. Jeremiah lost his hope in God, not what God would do, but in God himself. He thought God's character was maligned. And so he got all his knickers twisted in a knot in Lamentations chapter 3, from verse 1 to verse 21. He's just mad at God. And then something changes in Jeremiah's mindset. And if you know this verse, you'll remember the song that goes with it. He goes, and I don't know how long it took him to get from verse 20 to 21, but he goes, this I recall to mind, mindset shift. Therefore, I have hope, emotional shift. So first 21 verses, he's mad as can be. He's thinking bad thoughts about God. God, you're not trustworthy. God, you're not reliable. God, you've tricked me. God, I'm just a target for your target practice. I mean, he's railing at God. And then this I recall to mind. Therefore, I have hope. The Lord's loving kindness never cease. Great is thy faithfulness. Morning by morning, new mercies I see. We know the song, right? That comes from that pain. That comes from that despair. God is faithful. And he had to remember the truth, not what his thoughts were, but the truth of who God is. And that helped him emotionally. You see, so that's what we're learning in Empower to Change. How do we recognize our stinking thinking? How do we begin to see the truth? Because the truth will set us free. How do we begin to learn to see God and not tell him to do it our way? God's going to do what God's going to do. And he always has lessons for it in that process. If we can pay attention to that instead of paying attention to the outcome. Why isn't he fixing my marriage? Maybe because I need to learn to stand up to him. Maybe I need to learn to confront. Maybe I need to learn to be a peacemaker instead of a peacekeeper. There's lots of things I need to learn. Well, might as well learn them while I'm sitting in this traffic jam, because the traffic jam ain't changing, right? So anything else, Leanne? Final words?
No, I don't. You know what, one thing I really appreciate, Leslie, is just how you just bring it. You bring it so honestly and transparently. And, we talk in Empowered to Change about committing to the truth, not pretending. And that's one thing we don't pretend here. We're not pretending that relationships are less or more than they are. And I think that, is so important that we keep it real, One person did say this: is becoming healthy supposed to bring me to a place where I don't have resentment? And, you get to define. This is where sometimes we get to define what healthy is for us. And
Yeah.
go ahead. You were going to say something sweet. I know you were.
No, I was just going to say no, but healthy brings you to a place to recognize that you have resentment, and then you get to decide what you want to do with that. Healthy helps you to be aware of it, and then you get to decide what you want to do with it, because you have power to do something with that. You don't have to be a victim of your resentment.
That's right. I think that's a beautiful place. We don't have to be a victim of resentment. We don't have to be a victim of our can'ts. There's so much here. And if you want to move from victim mindset to ownership mindset, we invite you to join us. I know our coaching team is really looking forward to walking in 2022 with you. And we would love to see you in one of our groups.
Yeah, I am so fortunate to have great coaches on our team, and I could not do this ministry all by myself. I'm too tired and too old to take it all on all by myself anymore. And I am grateful that God has brought amazing, godly, wise, well-trained women to our team to help you. And we work together and, want to help you be all that God's called you to be. Don't let your own fear, 4-letter word, can't, 4-letter word, and whatever other 4-letter words we put in the chat, but fear and can't, we've talked a lot about today, limit who God's called you to be. You don't think Moses felt afraid? He did. You don't think Jeremiah felt afraid? He did. You don't think the Apostle Paul felt afraid? Read 2 Corinthians chapter 8. Conflicts without, fears within. I despaired of life until God sent Titus to help me. You see, people help us, not fix us, but they help us. They come alongside and walk with us. And that's what we want to do in this Empowered to Change group. It's not enough for us just to be on Facebook Live for an hour and a half, and it's not going to change your life. But you coming and being a part of a small group where you are learning from me and the coaches, and they're helping you put those tools into practice in your head, in your heart, in your emotional life, in your body. We talk a lot about your body because your body reacts. And then how do you handle the outside world? Once you take care of what's going on here, how do you start to interact with people? And how do you start working out here so that you're as healthy as you can be, even if they're toxic? How do you handle the traffic jam? You can't fix them. You can only decide how you're going to be in that moment. And that is so powerful. That's healthy. I have a choice. I don't have to have a meltdown because the traffic isn't the way I want it to be. I have a choice. I don't have to stay resentful. I'm aware I'm resentful. That's normal, considering what I've been through. So I don't have to feel shame of it, but I can decide whether this is useful to me to stay resentful, or I have other ways of having good boundaries. And I don't have to use my resentment to have a boundary because it's toxic to me. All right. Anything else, Leanne?
That's it. I think you just said it beautifully. And I know for me, I don't want to have that toxicity implode my life. And so I'm grateful to be here on your team and to be here live with everyone.
Well, ladies, we have another Facebook Live, I believe, on Monday. Julie, is it on the computer when it is?
Let me take a look and see. She does not have it on there for us, but I'll bet you I could figure it out.
Let me look on my calendar here. I think it's Monday, and it is at, let's see. I will be here on Monday, and Unia, no, that's not. I'm not sure when we're going to be back. You'll get an email. I think it's Monday. I think it's Monday or Tuesday at 10 o'clock, noon Eastern time. And Uni and I are going to be talking about what's the number one thing that you can do to lower your anxiety and stress. And some of it you've already heard today, how your mind affects your body, right? And so what do you do when you're under stress at the traffic jam? I can't take it, right? So we've already talked a little bit about that right now, because you can take it if you learn to take it. Life isn't going to always be the way you want it to be. So how do you take it when you don't like it is the question, right? All right. So we will see you either Monday or Tuesday of next week. And if you are interested in signing up for Empower to Change, please check it out at lesliebernick.com/change. And can you repeat that coupon?
I can. Let me pull it up. Sorry, I just closed it. It is 50 off E2C.
Okay, so 50 OFF E2C. And that will help you get a coupon. And I'm just going to say this, I didn't know that was happening. And so if you have already signed up for E2C and you didn't use your coupon, contact our admin, because you should be able to get that as well. All right. So thanks for being here. We appreciate you, and we'll see you soon. Take care. God bless. Bye-bye.